Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to our random review. Today's random review comes from 1973 from Canada. It's Rejeanne Padovani by Denys Arcand. This is a Canadian International Pictures release, spine number 23. And if you're familiar with the channel, CIP is a Vinegar Syndrome partner label, and CIP along with Canny and Deaf Crocodile are always vying for which one is my favourite. CIP also released another two Denys Arcand films. His fiction film debut Dirty Money, which I did a random review of, and this is from 1972, and then Gina from 1975, which is the one after Rejeanne Padovani. Rejeanne Padovani is kind of looked at as his kind of the best out of the three, and I would probably have to agree. Arcand started in documentary films before he moved on to fiction films. So the idea of this film kind of came about from two fairly disparate things. He made a documentary about an election race in Quebec, and he noticed that one of the candidates, or the candidates from one party I should say, were always being kind of followed around and driven by these men in dark sunglasses and big suits, and it turns out they were from the mafia, essentially, from gangsters. And it was really kind of the fact that how politics and gangsters were in bed with each other. And then also at the time he was reading about a Roman story about a estranged mother coming back, wanting to see her kids again, and the kind of establishment viewing her as dangerous and a pest. So he kind of merged those two ideas together. So what we have in Rejeanne Padovani is a focus on a new highway is about to be opened, and the night before, the notable characters that put this together are having a dinner party with their wives at the Mr. Padovani house. And he is essentially a mobster, owns construction companies, but the mayor and his wife are there. His associate, a lawyer is there, somebody from the ministry is there, so they're openly in bed with this member of organised crime, and Arcand does it very well because they're upstairs in this opulent house, and downstairs are the henchmen and the drivers of the ministry and the mayor. And so, and even in that kind of setting, there's the corruption of, we're introduced to one of the drivers who brought the politician along, and the kind of head of the henchmen, the kind of Padovani's lieutenant, if you will. He asks the newest driver to the group whether he's interested in the horse races, and if you bet with him, he'll give you a good horse. So he puts $20 and then he goes and phones and finds a horse, and then later on in the film he gives obviously more than $20 back to the guy saying your horse has won. So it's this corruption is kind of insipid and integral to almost getting anything done. In some ways, Rejeanne Padovani is a nice companion piece to John Sayles' City of Hope. You know, I'd crowbar Sayles in somewhere. As far as how a city works, I mean, this is on a smaller scale, because it has a much more kind of inbred, incestuous feel. You know, it's on less locations. Most of it is in this house, as well as some exterior moments. So into this kind of setup comes the news that Rejeanne Padovani is back in town in Montreal, and she's the ex-wife of the mob boss, and she ran off with a Jew, and this is kind of made clear that they don't like Jews because the Tannenbaums are kind of the rival gang, if you will, to the Padovanis, and she ran off with one of them, and the agreement with the lead, the head of the Tannenbaum gang, was that she wouldn't come back with the guy she ran off as well, and now they've been sighted in town, which kind of interrupts this celebratory dinner party of getting a new motorway, new highway built, and Rejeanne Padovani spends most of the time in the greenhouse wanting to see her children and her husband, and him sending the lackeys, various members of the dinner party and his henchmen, to go and see her and ask exactly what she wants. So I'll probably leave the plot and what happens, because again I'm not going to go into spoilers. There's also, it's just this constant, like one of the assistants, you know, a couple of reporters turn up and take a picture and then get beaten up. So kind of the spin doctor for the gangsters kind of has to call in favours and then give them tidbits on, you know, the highway deal, and there's this give and take. We see the different wives of the people there, and it's obvious that they've had affairs with the other men that are there as well. The mayor gets to see Padovani's new yacht, and of course the two hostesses that are down in the bottom with the henchmen, they turn up in the yacht to see that the mayor has an enjoyable evening, if you know what I mean. But again, the attitude to women is pretty interesting. The fact that, you know, Padovani, to celebrate, you know, this moment, gives everybody gifts, including the henchmen and the drivers. Granted, it's tie pins, and one of the henchmen kind of says, I think tie pins are out of fashion now. But of course, when it comes to the two women, they don't get anything. So the kind of head henchman, the lieutenant, goes, oh yeah, I'll get you something tomorrow. And then of course it's those two women that are given to the fairly sleazy mayor to give him a good time. It's an interesting film in the sense, you know, because I always talk about, you have to either have some likeable characters or have the characters at least be interesting enough, if they're not likeable, to actually capture the audience's imagination and attention. In Rejeanne Padovani, there's nobody in it that's particularly likeable. Again, we're dealing with organised crime, we're dealing with corrupt officials, sleazebag mayors, etc. So there's nobody likable, but the film is fascinating. The film is, if it was a book, you can't really put it down. Because again, you have the human element of, here's a woman coming and saying, I want to see my children after the 4 years. But of course they're seeing it as a threat, because she's saying, well, if you do this favour for me, I'll give you information about the Tannenbaum mob. But then they're thinking, well, if she's going to give information to us about the Tannenbaums, then surely she has told the Tannenbaum stuff about us. And things reach a conclusion with a fireworks show. As bleak as Gina and Celine Gomez, who's the lead in Gina, is one of the hostess women, and Rejeanne Padovani. So as bleak as Gina is, and as Dirty Money is, and again, the female actor on the cover of Dirty Money is the actor who plays Rejeanne Padovani. Rejeanne Padovani is even bleaker, even bleaker than the other two films. But that's why it's fantastic. Because again, it's honest, it's truthful, as Denys Arcand says, and just a wonderful interview with him on the special features in the disc. Everybody knows that there's a lot of construction companies in Canada, and I'm sure elsewhere around the world, that are in bed with the mob or run by organised crime. So if you want to build anything, you have to do deals with people. So again, it's just honest. It is brutal. People can disappear and nobody really is bothered or cares, as long as they get their backhander, as long as they get treated all right. And again, he does have a wonderful anecdote about some of the things that went on in Canada that perhaps influenced some of the events near the end of the film as well. But again, I'm not going to go into spoilers. It's just a wonderful film. Again, it's shot in that sort of almost documentary feel, but you can see the jump as far as from a camera movement, from a production design, a kind of step up from Dirty Money or La Maudite Galette to his second feature, Rejeanne Padovani. His second fiction feature, I should say, because as I said, he made a lot of documentaries before he did fiction films. So as I said, there's a 24-minute interview with Arcand from 2023, which is just wonderful. All three of these CIP releases of Arcand films has interviews that are great, because he just gives a wonderful perspective. He's funny. And there's audio interviews with cast members, Gabriel Arcand, Paul Belaragon, and Celine Gomez, who was the lead in Gina, as I say, and they're 10, 11 and 23 minutes, and there's the trailers for Dirty Money and Gina as well. And again, as with all the CIP releases, there's a nice booklet. So you can see in this one, even the way where he puts the camera and camera movement, as I said, there is a step up from his first fiction film, as it kind of becomes more of a non-documentary filmmaker, if you know what I mean, as far as the look of the film. But again, it's wonderful, it's bleak, it's honest, it's brutal, unfortunately still relevant. How many films, sadly, do we see from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and we still go, yeah, they're still relevant, because nobody seems to learn and how to live better and work better, but never mind, that's a subject for another video, probably on another channel. So thanks very much for watching this random review of Rejeanne Padovani. I'd highly recommend it. It's another corking release from Canadian International Pictures. So please let me know if you've seen it, what you think of it. Unfortunately, because of these 3 films, I may have to see if I can find some more Arcand films. I mean, I know later on in his career he won a foreign language Oscar for Barbarians at the Gate, and he was more interested in kind of personal stories, relationship stories, rather than more kind of, because all 3 of these are kind of socio-political films, whereas I think he then became more interested in kind of smaller relationship kind of based films. But we'll see. I mean, obviously I saw Jesus of Montreal probably when it came out, I think, but I haven't actually seen it since, so I'll probably have to pick up a copy of that. Yeah, another interesting filmmaker, and 3 films there, especially Rejeanne Padovani, that I would highly recommend. So thanks so much for watching, and hopefully you'll watch more random reviews that I produce at some point. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.